I stood in front of the mirror, running my fingers through my hair, fixing strands that didn't need fixing. My lips curled into a soft smile, unintentional, effortless. And that's when it hit me, I wasn't smiling because of my husband. It wasn't because of anything he said or did. No, this was different. This was because of someone else's words, a passing remark, something so insignificant that I should have forgotten it by now. But I hadn't. It had been a casual conversation, the kind you have in a crowded room filled with laughter and clinking glasses. A joke, harmless on the surface, but it lingered. You know, you have this way of tilting your head when you're thinking, like you're solving some great mystery. It's kinda captivating. It wasn't flirtation. There was no suggestive tone, no lingering glance. Just an observation, simple, straightforward. But somehow it stayed with me. I tried to brush it off. It was nothing. Just words. But my heart had reacted before my mind could shut it down. That tiny, fleeting moment had flipped a switch inside me, making me feel something I hadn't felt in years, noticed. Not as a wife. Not as a mother. But as a woman. And that was the most dangerous feeling of all. The restaurant was loud, filled with overlapping conversations, laughter, the clinking of glasses. I sat next to my husband, his hand resting casually on my thigh, his attention elsewhere. Across the table he was talking, effortless, confident, his voice weaving through the noise like it belonged there. Every word felt like it had layers, meanings buried beneath polite conversation. A glance that lingered a second too long. A comment that could be innocent but wasn't. No one noticed. Why would they? Nothing was happening. I told myself that over and over. Nothing was happening. But I started to notice patterns. I knew which nights he'd be there, which places he preferred. It wasn't intentional, not at first. Then it was. A quick stop for coffee, a gym session at the same time, a grocery aisle that suddenly felt too small. Just coincidence. But it wasn't. Later, lying next to my husband in bed, I felt the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing. I closed my eyes, willing my mind to settle, but the image that filled my thoughts wasn't his. And that was a problem. The air between us was thick, heavy with something unspoken, something neither of us wanted to name. It happened fast, too fast for second thoughts, too slow to be an accident. 1 second we were standing too close, the kind of closeness that people pretend not to notice. The next his lips were near mine, closer than they should be, closer than they'd ever been. I don't remember who leaned in first. Maybe we both did. Maybe it was inevitable. It was quick, barely more than a breath, a whisper of contact, but my pulse pounded as if the world had just shifted. Maybe it had. My body froze, my mind screamed, and yet for that fleeting moment I didn't pull away. When I did, it was like waking up from a dream I shouldn't have had. His eyes were wide, searching mine, trying to understand what we'd just done. "This is a mistake," he said, his voice rough, uneven. "I know," I whispered, barely trusting my own voice. But we both knew. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Everything at home felt different, even though nothing had changed. My husband wasn't the type to pry, but I could see it. The way his eyes lingered on me longer than before, searching for something he couldn't name. He sensed a shift, a tension I tried to hide, but he didn't know what to ask and I didn't offer answers. My routine was the same, my smiles rehearsed, my excuses seamless. But inside I was unraveling. He kept his distance now, careful, reserved, as if space could erase what had happened. I told myself that was a good thing, that it would fade. But I caught him watching me across rooms, holding eye contact a second too long before looking away. And I knew he was struggling just as much as I was. We had agreed. This was a mistake, a line never to be crossed again. We wouldn't be those people. But rules are easier to make than to follow, and every moment of restraint made the pull stronger. The more we tried to stop, the more impossible it became. And deep down I knew. It was only a matter of time. The restaurant was dimly lit, candles flickering between us, the kind of setting meant to reignite something that had faded. My husband smiled, his eyes warm, hopeful. He had planned everything. My favorite wine, a playlist of songs from when we first met, small details that should have made my heart swell. I laughed at his jokes, reached for his hand, played the role I was supposed to. But inside I felt like a stranger in my own life. When he leaned in to kiss me, I let him. His lips were familiar, comforting, safe. I should have felt something, relief, guilt, love. Instead I felt distance. Not in the physical sense, but in the way my mind drifted elsewhere, to someone I shouldn't be thinking about. And for the first time I wondered, When did this stop feeling real? I could have stopped everything that night. Let it be a wake-up call, a second chance. But the next day I saw him again. And in that moment I knew, the choice I should have made was already too late. It should have been just another afternoon, just another errand. But there he was, standing by the coffee shop, phone in hand, unaware of me until our eyes met. The world didn't stop, the streetlights didn't flicker, but something inside me shattered. 1 second we were pretending. The next we weren't. We didn't speak at first. We didn't have to. His jaw was tense, his hands shoved deep into his pockets like he was holding himself back. I should have walked away. Instead I stepped closer. This has to stop, I whispered, more to myself than him. But then he looked at me and I knew we were lying. We found new justifications, easier ways to explain what we were doing. It's just chemistry. Just bad timing. Just a mistake that hasn't ended yet. But my conscience wasn't silent. It nagged, whispered in my ear late at night, reminding me what was at stake. I started watching my husband more closely, reading too much into his expressions. Did he know? Could he tell? Fear crept in, but the worst part wasn't the guilt. It was the way the danger made it feel even more intoxicating. It started with small things, casual questions, ones that seemed harmless at first. You've been distracted lately. Everything okay? My husband wasn't the jealous type, but his eyes lingered a little too long, his tone held something new. Suspicion. I kept my answers light, deflecting, laughing it off. But my pulse told another story. He changed you. The one I shouldn't have been thinking about. The one who used to make jokes, keep things easy. Now he was tense, restless. Our conversations weren't effortless anymore. He was pulling back, hesitating, as if realizing how far we had fallen. This is getting messy, he muttered once, looking past me instead of at me. It was supposed to be a warning, but it felt like a goodbye. I wanted to end it. I convinced myself I still could. But the truth settled in, cold and undeniable. I wasn't the one in control anymore. And then he showed up. Someone I never saw coming. Someone who wasn't supposed to be part of this. The moment I saw his face, I knew. Everything was about to fall apart. I wasn't supposed to be there. It was reckless, stupid. But the storage room was quiet, out of sight, a place where no one was supposed to walk in. I had been struggling to move a heavy box, trying to squeeze it through the narrow doorway, but no matter how much I adjusted, it wouldn't fit. He stepped in behind me, close enough that I could feel his breath at my neck, his voice low. Here, let me. I should have walked away. I should have let him take the box and left. Instead, I let the moment stretch too long, let the weight of everything unsaid settle between us. The space was too small. The air too thick. His hands brushed against mine, and suddenly the box wasn't the only thing that didn't fit. And then the door opened. My husband stood there, frozen, eyes locked on me. On us. There was no way to explain it away. No excuses. No lies that would fix this. He didn't yell. Didn't curse. He just looked at me, at us, with something worse than anger. Disbelief. And then he turned and walked away. The house was too quiet. No slammed doors, no shouting, no accusations. Just silence. My husband didn't ask why, didn't demand an explanation. He just packed a bag, grabbed his keys and left. No dramatic exit, no final words. Just a look. One that cut deeper than any insult ever could. I waited for something. A text. A call. A sign that he was coming back, that he wanted to talk, that there was still something left to salvage. But my phone stayed silent. And then he was gone too. The one who had set all of this in motion. No messages, no apologies, no excuses. He disappeared from my life as if he had never been there at all. No closure. Just absence. I had thought losing my husband would be the hardest part. But the emptiness that followed was worse. Because for the first time I wasn't torn between two lives. I wasn't caught between two men. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was just alone. And that was the one thing I had never prepared for. I tried. I apologized, I begged, I swore it hadn't meant anything, but words felt useless. Some mistakes don't have fixes, no matter how desperately you want them. My husband didn't leave immediately. He came back, but not really. His things were still here, but he wasn't. We moved through the same spaces, shared the same routines, but we weren't a couple anymore. We were strangers with a history too painful to erase. He didn't yell. He didn't punish me. He just stopped looking at me the way he used to. That was worse than anything I had imagined. No love, no anger, just indifference. I would have preferred rage. At least then I'd know he still felt something. The house felt colder. The silence stretched longer. Nights turned into months, and one day I realized, this was my life now. Not tragedy. Not redemption. Just an existence stripped of what once made it whole. Love had lived here once, but now there was only emptiness. And the cruelest part? I had no one to blame but myself.